All right, morning folks. Welcome to session 4 of the AWS Security Masterclass. Today we're going to look at EC2 EBS, Elastic Block Storage, and some of its misconfiguration. My name is Riaz, again, building Cloud for SaaS engineers. These are my handles. We've done this last week as well. Oh, I need to give this to you folks again as part of my compliance team. This is the Model Code of Conduct. You folks are going to be familiar with this now. So please do take a look at that. Okay, today's agenda, what we're going to look at is, and this might be familiar territory for a lot of you folks, if you're going to be working with AWS EC2 instances as part of everyday work or any ways you want. Volumes and snapshots are kind of things you can't miss when you're working with AWS EC2, right? So we're going to look at volumes and snapshots. We'll just do a brief intro to what they are for folks who have not heard of them before. We're going to set up the lab for this session, and we're going to look at the misconfigurations. There are 3 misconfigurations that we'll cover in the labs. We have an unencrypted volume, unencrypted snapshots, and public snapshots, right? One of the lab exercises where you're going to work with a public snapshot and then mount it to a volume mount it to an EC2 instance that you've created. Okay, and as usual, we're going to work with undoing the changes that we've done to our AWS accounts. So what is EBS, right? Elastic Block Storage, Elastic Block Store rather, Amazon EBS provides block level storage volumes for use with EC2 instances. So when I was interfacing with EBS, right, and, apart from fancy terminology, the way I understand EBS is that it behaves like raw unformatted disks. So essentially, this is your hard disk for your EC2 instances, right? You have an EC2 virtual machine. So this is going to be a virtual disk, right? Imagine a pen drive that you attach to your computer or the SSD inside your laptop, right? So that is what your EBS is. EBS volumes are the disks that are actually attached to EC2 instances, right? So EBS does not exist as as a raw unformatted disk, but it exists as a volume that is then attached to an EC2 instance. Okay, and interestingly, you can share EBS volumes and EBS snapshots between accounts. What are EBS snapshots? They're essentially full disk images. You make a copy of your entire disk that is attached to the EC2 instance, and that becomes your snapshot. Right? You can create a snapshot and you can have multiple snapshots. You can restore the snapshot as a volume and convert it back as the primary disk for an EC2 instance. Okay. The issue, one of the major misconfigurations with EC2 snapshots, volume snapshots, is that it can be shared between accounts, right? And more dangerously, publicly. Okay. More dangerously, publicly, they can be shared. All right. That's the intro. What we can do is, before we jump into the masterclass scenario itself. Yeah, Tejas, sure. You have a question?
So if we
yeah, it will create. So let's do that a little. Let's take a look at the web UI in AWS, so that there's a sense of familiarity with the commands you're running. Can you all log in into your AWS console and go to EC2? I'll log in as well. No, I'm already logged in. Can you all log in and go to EC2? In the EC2 dashboard, make sure you're in the US East 1 region. In the EC2 dashboard, either through the dashboard itself or on the panel on the left, you have volumes, right? So you can go to volumes. It will be empty if you don't have a virtual machine. We're going to create one and then we'll revisit this page. Okay, that's where your volumes will come up. I have some EC2 instances, so I will have volumes listed. Of course, AWS not tell me that I've been logged out, but it will be Just a second, let me just log in. Are you folks logged in? Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Under volumes, because I have, I think, 3 virtual machines already running, 3 EC2 instances already running, I will be able to see their volumes under volumes. Okay, right, and it will tell you that it is in use, right, and it will tell you what it is attached to. Okay, we'll see this when we are going to create an EC2 instance now as part of the lab, and we are going to come back here and take a look at the EC2 dashboard. Right? Here's the command. I'll just paste it here. Right. Can you get to that file and run the commands? I'll tell you what the commands have while you're running the commands. Okay, you're going to create a folder first and move into that folder. Then you're going to run a create key pair command to create an SSH key so that you can use it to then log in into the VM. You're going to change the permissions on the private key so that SSH can work. Otherwise, SSH complains that the key permissions are too wide. Then you're going to run EC2 run instances with by creating an EC2 instance from a public AMI. This is mine. It exists in my account. I've already created a machine for you, so you're just going to use that. And then the machine type is T2 micro. T2 micro would come under free tier, right? So you wouldn't be charged for this machine. And then the key name, and you're going to name the VM, right? And in US East 1 region and with profile masterclass. Make sure your profile masterclass is set up when you're working with the correct account. The next command simply gets your public IP address. This is a script I host that gives you your public IP. We are going to use this to set up the security group, right? So that SSH is only open to your IP address right now. Okay. Yeah, and that's about it. And then you run the SSH command. Can you all confirm that you have SSH'd into the machine? It takes some time after you've run the EC2 run instances command. We'll give it like some 15 seconds, 15-20 seconds, and you'll have your machine up. Logged in here. If any of the commands generate an error, just let me know before you move to the next command. Yeah, permission denied for the last SSH command. make sure that you have to do chmod 400. This is a crucial command. Make sure this is run so that SSH can run properly. Just thumbs up once you've started the machine and you're able to SSH successfully. It says permission denied for the SSH command at the end. Is that you folks are facing? Then instead of EC2 user, try connecting to Ubuntu. That's the username. Right, so you have your command will become SSH-I, the key name, and then Ubuntu at $public_IP. That should work. Okay. All right. So I've got three questions for you around. Also joining the class. 1 sec. Yeah, I was saying, once you've run the commands and set up your machine, and you can SSH into the machine, right? Some of you just confirmed you can. Okay. Once you're here, let's quickly try and answer a couple of questions around the volumes and snapshots, and see if we can discover some public snapshots as well. So question 1 is, for the instance that you've just created, right? Can you identify the volume of the EC2 instance, like we looked at it earlier, and tell me if the volume is encrypted or not? Okay. Second is, and we're going to discuss, we're going to take a look at each of these questions separately, and we're going to see if there's a public snapshot, identify the snapshot, and encryption status on the snapshot we're going to identify. And the last is, you're going to create a volume out of a public snapshot, attach it to the EC2 instance that you've just created, identify the users on that EC2 instance to which that volume belong to, right? If discovering somebody else's volume, and there's a sensitive file, see if you can find that and read the file, right? So jumping in, the two ways to do this, right? The command line and obviously the web way to do this. Can you tell if the volume is encrypted or not, right? I will give you the command. It's going to be in the slides anyways when you get it, but for now I'm going to paste it here. There are two commands, the first of which obtains the list, the volumes that are attached to the current instance, and then the second command is simply to describe the properties of that volume, right? So let me run that. An easiest way to quickly do this is obtain the instance ID from the web console, right? Then you're like, can be fairly certain, and unless you have like got multiple EC2 instances running. I'm just going to configure. Sure, what's that?
It's not encrypted.
Yeah. Check. Got this here. Okay, we'll try and run the first command. Oh. Okay. Describe EC2 instances will give you a lot of information, which is why you're restricting the amount of information coming from that query. As I said, easiest is to go to the AWS web console and take a look at the instances. The one that is running, I've got multiple instances, but there's only one running, which I've created now using the previous commands, right? Can you all confirm you have this, at least this running? We want to work with the commands. Okay. So if you've got a machine running, right, this is the instance ID. You can click on the machine name and copy the instance ID from here and insert it into your describe instances command. Make sure you're running this under the profile masterclass. So now when I run the command, this is what it looks like. I've added the instance ID here, and when I run this, it will give me the volume attached to instance. I've got two volumes, you will have one, right? Can you confirm this? You'll all see one volume, and the ID is going to be different than what you see on screen here. It will be your volume. For the next command, you can copy the volume name and add it to, or replace the volume ID placeholder in the next command and paste that here. So describe volumes, the volume ID, query the volumes property, and look for the attribute encrypted. This is false. You all get this? Yes, no? Good. Any difficulty with the commands, folks? It's a pretty straightforward command. Something new that you are seeing in the command is the query argument. Query is a very powerful, way of working with AWS, all AWS CLI commands, and it allows you to parse the JSON, right? Because the output of AWS EC2 describe instances without the query is pretty rich, right? So you're going to end up sifting through a lot of data if you don't specify query, right? You can do it offline as well. I mean, you don't need to do it as part of the query. You can pipe it to JQ or something and work with the query independently of the AWS CLI. Right, so if you see, the data is a lot. It essentially everything about the EC2 instance. From this, I had to extract reservations, instances, block device mappings, EBS, and volume ID, which is reservations, instances, block device mappings, EBS, and volume ID. So I was able to only print this as required. Right. Similarly, for describe volumes, the query allows you to extract specific bits from the JSON. As I said, you can also pipe this to JQ and work with this without query. Right? So you could write your JSON query after this as well. Okay. So we've identified that the volume is not encrypted. Right? You can confirm that by going to your instance under storage, the volume that's mentioned, you go click on that. It'll take you to the volumes section of EC2. You can select the volume that's been identified and the encryption status is not encrypted. Okay, this is a UI way of doing things. Definitely faster for a bunch of folks, but ClickOps is not always the perfect solution. We need to know how to do this via the command line as well. Going back to question 2. In the US East 1 region, there is a public snapshot created for this class, right? So the objective is to find the snapshot using the web console. This is painful using the CLI. This is one of the places where it's painful using the CLI. It's going to take a lot of time. So we're going to quickly use the web console and identify the encryption status on this snapshot. Okay. Here's the interesting bit about AWS EBS public snapshots. Okay. Go to snapshots. And what are snapshots? Snapshots are in moment specific copies of volumes, right? So if you go to snapshots and go to public snapshots and you're in US East 1 region, right, you'll see a lot of snapshots here. Okay, now if you realize what you're looking at, you'll understand the amount of data that could possibly be leaked over through AWS. These are snapshots of different volumes belonging to different accounts, right? And there are more than, I mean, this is one, it shows about 2000, but definitely more than that. If you see this page number 8, page number 11, 14, 17, and each one of these is about, I think there are 50 per page. There are about 90 odd pages, I think, in US East 1. And this is region specific. So US East 1 has these many. If you change your region and go to say East 2 or say Japan or Singapore, you have more snapshots belonging to that region. All of these are public snapshots that have been created by people and either been misconfigured and made public, right? Which is obviously a bad thing to do, or they have been deliberately made public because devs and infra folks want to share this snapshot with another account within their organization. And the easiest and fastest way for them is, hey, let me make this public. You use this snapshot, create a volume and make your EC2, and then I will convert it back to private. The part about converting it back to private is lost at the end because people do get busy. What we're going to work with is look at these public snapshots and quickly find a snapshot that I created for this class. So you can just search for Masterclass. It is searching through all of the public snapshots. As I said, are definitely more than 2000. When the search results do come back, you'll have something like this. Okay. Still searching. Doing this through the command line is also possible, but it takes the same amount of time, but the command can get stuck and then you may be tempted to hit Control C. Then you have to restart all over again. Oh, so it's found the snapshot, right? The question we're solving for is identify the encryption status on this snapshot. Okay, so you click on the snapshot. Again, like how we did describe volumes, there's the describe snapshots as well command, and you can identify the encryption by looking at the snapshots properties. In this case, it's straightforward. You click on the snapshot, it will tell you that the encryption is not encrypted. Okay, this is obviously a problem because if the snapshot was encrypted, and if you had created a volume out of the snapshot that is encrypted, you wouldn't be able to look through the volume, right? But a lot of snapshots in AWS across different regions again, right? The total number of snapshots across all regions exceed about 50,000-60,000 snapshots, right? And each of these snapshots is a disk. If you find a disk, you're tempted to look inside the disk as an attacker. You would want to see what data is present inside the disk. Okay, so you have this snapshot. The next, yeah, Dave.
I wanted to know
you can use KMS, right? So KMS is another service within AWS, the key management service. You can create a key for your user and your account, and you can then encrypt while creating the snapshot. You get a prompt to you can either through the command line or through the UI. When you're creating a snapshot, you have a choice to encrypt it and then provide the key. Right? So only you, even if it's public, only you can decrypt it using the KMS that you own, and then attach it, create a volume out of it, and then attach it to an EC2 instance. Right? So in that case, if it's public also, and if there's a KMS, then you can't do anything with it. Okay, so let's quickly go back to the last and the most interesting section of this exercise. You found the snapshot, you've identified that the encryption is not present, it's unencrypted. Great, perfect for attackers. What we're going to do now is, we've already done this. As I said, describe snapshots. Snapshots encrypted is the status, like volumes encrypted. You had, you could identify the encryption status of a volume. You can similarly do that with snapshots. What you're going to do now is create a volume out of this snapshot. Okay, so do this using the web console. Once you've found the snapshot, that is through the search, whatever the search bar, create a volume from the snapshot. You right click on it and just create a volume. Once you've created, right, we are going to attach it to your EC2 instance that you're SSH into already. Okay, can you do that? Quickly create a volume. You found the snapshot, right click on this and create volume. That's it. User defaults, don't change anything in the defaults. Once you've created a volume, go to volumes. The status of the volume will be available. Okay, go to volumes. You see volume state, right? So I have all of them are attached to something or the other. Okay. For you, when you create a volume out of this public snapshot that you've just discovered in the wild, and there's some interesting stuff in there, you're going to create a volume out of it. The volume status is going to be available because it's not attached to anything, right? The next step is going to be right click on the volume and attach volume. It's grayed out to me because it's already attached, but for you it will be attached volume. Okay, attach volume and select the instance ID of your machine that you've currently SSH into. Attach it to the instance that you're currently SSH into. And when you do that, under storage, you will have and the volume is going to be attached to your EC2 instance. The instance availability zone, in your case, you can look under details, and it will be US East 1A or 1B. Availability zones are like even smaller subsections of what a region is. where the data center is.
I have a mistake. That's the one name. I'm not sure. 1B or 1A.
Oh, okay. Not sure where you see this in the web. I usually use the command line to do this, but let me just see. Is it working well? Yes, under networking, US East 1A is where your instance is, right? In the wider context of AWS has partitions. Okay, worldwide there are like the logical grouping is called partitions. There are 6 partitions in the world. Okay, so you have your AWS specific, your what we consume as consumers, we have that AWS. Then you have AWS Gov, which is for the government of United States. Then you have AWS China, right? And then there is US ISO 1, right? And I think ISO 1 and ISO 2, right? These are top secret government AWS installations, and I'm forgetting the 6th one, but there are 6, right? 6 of these partitions. I posted on recently. I replied to somebody on LinkedIn, right? So there are 6 of these partitions. In each of these partitions, there are regions. So the US East 1 region of AWS, the thing that the partition that we consume, is not the same as the US East 1 region of US AWS Gov, right? So they're 2 different regions, even though they have the same name, right? So partitions, regions, availability zones. Okay, so I think of it the way I try and visualize this is partitions are like continents, right? Your regions are like countries, and then your availability zone is like a city. In a room, it is the building, the room, and then the rack in which the data is. All right. So once you got there, if you've successfully attached your volume to the instance, there's going to be a place where you would have looked at what device ID or the device name you're going to attach the volume as. Right now, we're going to do some Linux internals here. We're going to work with the disks on Linux. Once you clicked on attach volume, you will end up with the volume as a disk attached to the instance. So in SSH, you can run lsblk list block basically to see the different volumes that are attached to the system. Yeah, Tejas. Yeah. No, so it's the same problem that yeah, it's the same problem with availability zones. I think take a look at what availability zone your instance is, right? So under no, US, that's the region, right? So US East 1A is the availability zone. Make sure your volume that you've created is also in the same availability zone, right? So let me just do this. So I can go to snapshots, work with prevent it from downloading the whole catalog. Come on. To see my snapshots. Why is AWS not remembering this? Okay, so here's a snapshot. When I right click and I say create volume, do you see this availability zone? Make sure this is the same as your instance, right? Then you'll be able to see when you're attaching the volume. Think of it this way, right? So volume is like a pen drive. Now you have your EC2 instance as a virtual machine, either laptop in one rack, and you have a pen drive in another rack. You can't physically connect it, right? They have to be in the same physical location as well. So yeah, so go back to the volume. Once you've attached and run lsblk, you will see that the volume is now attached to your system. Right? Do you see this? This is the block and this is the partition. These are the partitions. Right, so I could wow, okay, sorry about that. X VDF X oh sorry, device already mounted, so sorry, it's already connected. Yeah, the block. So what we'll do next is we have the volume that's attached. Now you have a pen drive that's attached to the system, but unlike most most examples, when you have a pen drive, you connect and your file system is ready, right? But in this case, what we're going to do is we have to mount the file system to a specific location, right? We're going to do that using the mount command, and it's in the presentation itself. You run sudo mount the location of the volume, actually the location of the partition, and to mount it to the /mnt folder. It's like a folder that's always available in Linux where you tend to mount stuff. So you can do, let me just see if I have, yeah, okay, it's been mounted. So I do sudo mount what and where, one where. That's how I remember mount command. Mount what where, right? So what do you want to mount and where do you want to mount? So sudo mount the partition to mnt folder, go to mnt and list files. These are the files in the volume that you created from a public snapshot, right? Do you realize the essential? Do you realize what you've done? You've now found a public snapshot in the wild, right? You were able to create a volume out of it, attach it to your EC2 instance, and now you're going through the file system. Imagine out of the 60,000-80,000 public snapshots that are out there, right, of which a lot of them are unencrypted. You can do this for any one of them. As I said, you could take this up as a research project as well. Try and dig through, sift through the file systems and see if there's anything interesting left. Obviously, you'll have to automate a bunch of these things. Use tools like TruffleHog, for example, once you've mounted, to traverse the file system, work with multiple EC2 instances and sets of volumes that you attach to them. Otherwise, you'll not be able to go through all of the snapshots in your lifetime, right? So there's just too many. Somebody's done this before, so there's a public report as well available on the kind of data that people have leaked. It's an older research, but because people keep adding new snapshots day in day out, you may find new information that's not been reported before. Okay, coming back. So we've now done /mnt. We've mounted the file system. We are inside the directory. This is the file system of the volume, right? So, yeah, Tesh. You have a question?
Just one question. While our
yes,
EC2 is East 1B, I need to get all.
Yes, right. Your availability zone has to match where the EC2 instance is.
Where the instance is.
Yeah, because you're going to connect it to that EC2 instance eventually. Yeah, good. So a very common place that I quickly look through is obviously the home directory for the volume. So I could do, I'm already here, so I'll do home. Okay. This is in the volume that I have attached, right? You will have a different user. Can you tell me what user you have? Nice. I feel left out. You folks have MySQL admin and I don't have. Let me go and quickly create a volume then. One, create volume from snapshot, making sure I'm in the same availability zone. Create volume. Volumes created. Go back to EC2 dashboard or instances. Back to the running instance. F1 volumes created today morning. This is one available. Attach this to F1. Device name is SDG, so it will end up as when I do LSBLK, this will come up as XVDG. Right? Attach volume. Nice. So I go back to MNT. I unmount. As I said, I'm feeling left out. You folks have MySQL admin. I'll do LSBLK list blocks XVDG. One is here. I will do sudo mount what where what G1 where to MNT sltra/home. What? I mounted the wrong volume. Where is you have MySQL admin? Yes. Okay. What is the? Is there anything interesting inside the? Always use ls ltr so that you get like hidden. You get to see hidden files as well. So if I move to db admin, db home, db admin. In your case, MySQL admin, I think. Yeah, permission. So I'm dying here. Okay, cd space cd. What am I doing? Sudo I /mnt. Just going to root. Oh, there you go. No wonder it was not letting me get in. So I go to MySQL admin. This is weird. Why did it show db admin when I did? This is strange, right? See, I mounted XVDG1 to MNT. It showed me db admin, but it doesn't exist. And when now I check, the MySQL admin is there. I think some refresh issue with the file system. Anywho, so I'm inside ls ltra. By the way, the shortcut to alias for this is you can do ll on Ubuntu systems. There's a credentials.txt, right? Have you got the credentials.txt? Can you see what the credentials.txt contain? Okay, credentials.txt contains. Okay, this looks like a MySQL host. It's RDS, which we are going to do in I think session 8 or something. We're going to look at RDS then. But this is how the name is, right? This is how the RDS name is, host name, and there's a user and there's a password. So if this was real, obviously it's not. If this was real, you had now the ability to connect to an RDS instance that's whose username and password is also available to you. Right, as an example of what can be found in credentials.txt. Excellent. All right. There's nothing else on this disk, so you can switch out of root and mount this. interestingly also, right, think of it this way, because the disk is attached to your instance, you have access to everything that's on the instance, including the journaling file system of extension 3, extension 4. If it was a Windows, you had access to say the MBR or the MFT records in NTFS. What I'm trying to get to is that even if something was deleted on the disk, right, it's like something's deleted on your local disk or your pen drive, there are tools available that you can use to undelete and recover stuff, right? As long as the information is present, the file headers and inode numbers are present in JFS, in journaling file system of extension 3 and extension 4, which Ubuntu uses as a partition, or NTFS in Windows, you would be able to recover files that have been deleted on disk. Okay, so using tools like say sleuthkit or ext undelete, there are a bunch of them. You could use these tools and find test disk is also a very popular tool that I use to file recovery. Sometimes my friends come home and say, hey, I deleted a bunch of things on this hard drive, can you recover my kids' photos and all that? So use test disk, you can recover stuff from disks that are attached to your system. So it's the same way, if something's been deleted on that disk, you can recover it, right? So if somebody like tried to do, they've tried to do some damage and they've deleted their history, they've deleted bash history, they've deleted their entire user folder, you can use these forensic recovery tools and recover data that has been deleted, including logs and stuff. Right? All right. You can go ahead and undo the changes, and I've deliberately added manual steps here so that you get a little familiar with where the instance and the volumes and the snapshots are, right? This is going to be part of the presentation. I'll give this to you, but essentially go to EC2 instances, volumes and snapshots, and delete stuff that you've created. As usual, if you are going to practice this, then leave them for now. You can delete them when you get the presentation next week. Okay. I'll share this. I need you folks to please like, share, subscribe. Basically the feedback. There's a new thing I've added in the there's a yes no question I've added in the feedback. Make sure that you fill that up. Well, that's all for today. I will see you all next week.